is always the best way to put our trust in Him, as we have seen in the life of Abraham and Sarah, haven't we? When people let go of the world, let go of their faith in other things, let go of their own ideas, things go much better, don't they? What happens when they don't? That's what we're going to look at tonight. Everybody grab your Bibles. Let's go to Genesis chapter 19. And where are we in the story? Well, Sodom and Gomorrah ain't there no more. In fact, all the cities of that valley of Shem were completely destroyed, except for one. Zoar, the little one. The one that Lot made a deal saying, hey, come on, let me go to that little city. I don't want to be out there in the mountain. I can't survive up in the mountains. I can't live in a cave. Let me go where there's people, right? And God let him go, but how long did that last? This is where we left off, is in Genesis chapter 19, verse 30. And Lot went up out of Zoar. Didn't last long. And dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. So this is where he ends up, which is exactly where God wanted him to be, right? That's where we'll be safe. That's where you will be. And I will bless you there. But we have to remember that when God saves us, and how many here are saved by the blood of Jesus Christ? Yes. When we are saved and brought out of destruction, it's a good idea to let go of all the old habits, all the old ways, because they will just what? Drag us down, right? And that's what we're going to look at tonight. I thought we'd actually start, instead of going to Genesis, keep going with the story there in Genesis, let's go to Ephesians. Because Ephesians, and actually several writings of Paul, talk about this concept of once we accept Jesus Christ as a Savior, it is best if we get rid of the old man, as he calls it, the old ways, the old ideas, the things, because then we can truly serve God. Then we can be truly blessed of God, right? In fact, let's look at Ephesians chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 17. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord. And this is something that Paul often does. When he wants to make sure they're paying attention, he reminds them that this is the testimony of who? Not Paul. Not just a man's ideas. This is from the Lord. That you henceforth, now that you have received Jesus, you are now Christians, that you henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk in the vanity of their mind. Gentiles being basically the word for those who are unsaved. Now that you've gone from being unsaved to saved, you should not go back and say, they had some good ideas. They had some good ways of thinking. They had some fun things. They had some, good wisdom, right? So I'll do a little bit of both. I'll do a little bit of God, and I'll do a little bit of that. Is that a good way to think about it? No. You got to get rid of those. Verse 18, because how does he describe our old mind, our old ways? Verse 18, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over to lasciviousness, which is just that concept of whatever feels good, do it, right? You're number one. Whatever you think is best, whatever you think will be good, you do that. To work all uncleanness with greediness. I want more sin. I want more bad. I want more of that thing. And should that be our attitude? No. We're to repent of those things, right? Not just turning from being a non-Christian to being a Christian, unsaved to saved, but then also turn our back on the old ways. That's what we need to do to be truly blessed. Now, do I have to do that to be saved? No, that's not the deal, because we're not saved by works. But to truly live a life under his blessing, we have to make those changes, don't we? In fact, look what it says next, verse 20. But you have not so learned Christ. It's not what Christ is, not how he works. If so be that you have heard him and been taught by him, as the truth is in who? Jesus. So bottom line is, if there's a difference between the way the world thinks and God thinks, who's right? Well, yeah, no contest, is it? If there's a difference between the way you think and the way God thinks, who's right? God. Verse 22. Here's what we need to do. That you put off concerning the former conversation, former way of life, which he will refer to as the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust of our heart, lust of our mind, lust of our soul. That we want, the things we want are wrong. They're a lie. The things we think will give us security, the things that we think will give us happiness, the things we think we need, they're lies. They're deceitful lusts. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind, that you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Not fake holiness, not just a facade, but true holiness. That should be our goal. Basically, from the time we accept Jesus Christ as our Savior, we become born again, right? Little newborn babes, right? We spend the rest of our life basically trying to get rid of the old stuff and bring in the new stuff. Is that easy or hard? Anybody ever tried that in your house? Let's just get rid of all the old stuff. And bring in some good stuff, right? It's expensive, it's hard, it's difficult, it's sacrifice. In fact, isn't it easier to just kind of lay back in that old couch and say, this is pretty good. This requires little to no effort. And sometimes in our spiritual life, we do the same thing. It's like, I've always lived that way. I've always thought that way. I've always done it that way. So what's the big deal? Well, unfortunately, Lot's daughters thought that way. Let's go back to the story. Now, I'm not going to dump too much on the daughters of Lot here. Because let's face it, what kind of world did they grow up in? They grew up in Sodom, right? Their mindset from a little child was what? Look out for number who? Number one. Look out for me. We can come up with solutions. We know how to do it. In fact, only a little time before, their dad was going to throw them outside to a bunch of angry men to solve the problem. So there's a certain problem in the mindset, right? And a lot of it that we've seen has centered around sexuality and those kinds of things. And they've got all that old baggage. Their old man is corrupt, right? That's what they've been taught, and that's the way they believe. Now, clearly, though, they've also been taught that they should not marry some other guy, other person, right? That was kind of ingrained in them as well. See, that's the thing about Lot. He always had this concept that we are separate from those people, but we will still live among them and think like them a little bit and be wise like them a little bit, stuff like that. But we will be separate from them, right? So they have that idea, but now they've got a problem. Because where are they living? In a cave in the mountains, overlooking a valley of absolute destruction, except for a tiny little city they just left. How many eligible bachelors are there in the cave? No. 0. How many men do they see when they go to the store? There isn't a store. How many, when they go to work, how many men do they see? They don't go to work, right? It's just survival. And that's the situation we find them in Genesis chapter 19, starting in verse 31. And the firstborn daughter said unto the younger daughter, Our father is old. All of that conversation going on in this part of the Bible. Everybody's like, hey, this person's old. And there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. There's not a man here, there's not a man in the entire earth that we can marry and have children and keep the line going. Now, keep in mind, in their mindset, what would be the worst thing that could happen to them as a woman? No children. What is the worst thing that could happen to the family? It die out. So they're looking around and saying, we have to have children, we got to keep this line going. Again, is that right? Is that righteous? Is that what God? Is that holiness? No, but that's the way they've always been taught, right? And they look around and say, there's no man. Now, did they know there were men down in Zoar? That little city? Yeah. But what is Lot? Clearly, their father already told them. Yes, don't hang out with those guys. All right, you have none of them. So they look around and said, there's no options. The only option is who?
Lot.
Cringe. Everybody.
But they didn't ask for father. They didn't ask for father
Nope.
either.
Verse 32. Amongst themselves they came up with this master plan. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him that we may preserve seed of our father. Now keep in mind, again, I'm not going to dump on them too much because, again, that's their mindset, isn't it? We have to keep the father's line going. How important is that, right? Especially when we consider Lot's father died. Keep that in mind too. Abraham took him on to keep the line going, right? So this is we got to keep the line going, and he is, in their mind, the only option. Now, was he the only option? Is he the only solution? No, because Lot has Abraham. Had they met Abraham? Possible. I assume they were part of the family that was rescued by Abraham and his men. Does he know that Lot has a relationship with Abraham? Yes. Does Abraham have family? Yes. Does he got kids and things like that? Yes. Ishmael. But, he's going to get more. So in their mindset, it was the only option, right? And that's the problem. In their mind, they went back to the ways of the world, right? They saw the problem. The problem is we need children to keep the line going. We need children to fulfill our purpose. Again, not right mindset, but that's what they were always taught, right? In fact, they saw, maybe heard about how Sarah never had children and she was looked down upon. So there's got a little bit of everything there. They saw the problem, but they came up with whose solution? Their solution. The solution that would be probably in Sodom and Gomorrah, big thumbs up, right? That just makes sense. But does it make sense? Is it right and righteous? Did they talk to Lot about it?
That's what I'm saying.
Did they talk to God about it? No. What did they do, though? They did it. Verse 33. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Which brings a question. Where did they get the wine? They had a lot of wine. So must have been interacting with somebody up there in the cave. I don't think they're making bathtub wine out there in the middle of nowhere. But, clearly having some interaction, but again, not the right people, right? And so she did. And the next day, verse 34, and it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesterday night with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. Again, there's still that purpose, right? They feel like they have a noble purpose, and therefore the solution ends justifies the what? Means. And that's a worldly concept, right? There's no consideration of what is right, what is good, what is holy, what is blessed of God. That's not in their mindset. They just see a problem, let's fix it according to our old ways, right? Now, this is a very cringy way to do it, but let's face it in our life. How many times are we faced with problems? And when we think of the solution is not a righteous one. The solution is not a holy one. It is not one blessed by God, but one that, hey, that's the way everybody does it. And that's the way they do it. That's just a common way to fix that problem. Is that a problem? And what does Paul say about that? We got to get rid of that mindset, that way of living, and cast off the old man with his ideas and corruption and put on the new man, right? That's a process. Now, what happened? Did the younger one do it too? Verse 35. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and perceived not that she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father, which came as a tremendous shock to who?
Lot.
How did you? Did they tell him? So, I don't know. Verse 37, and the firstborn bare a son and called his name, what? That sound familiar?
Does it?
Very familiar. The same as the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son and called his name Ben-Ami. The same as the father of the children of Ammon. So what's the result? They each had a boy, which grew into families, which grew into nations, which grew into very interesting nations in the history of Israel. Because it is the Moabites who had King Balak, for example, the one who tried to get Balaam to curse the people of Israel as they came across his land as they headed toward the promised land, right? How'd that work out for King Balak? Not well. God blessed them anyways. They're also, God used them to punish the people through King Eglon, the big fatty. That's how he's described in the Bible. I'm not picking on the guy. It just says he was enormous. But God used Ehud, one of the judges, to come and stab him and get the people free. But he used Moabites to punish his people. The Moabites gave us the wonderful god named Shamash. Shamash is a horrible, horrible god. Now, I know he's not real, but in their mind he was. And they would actually sacrifice newborn children to Shamash in order to appease him. That's what we get from the Moabites. Problem? Big problem. Well, the Ammonites aren't any better, are they? For the Ammonites, we had, again, gave the Israelites problems over and over again, constantly used, and they gave us the god Milcom, which was so bad. They had an entire valley near Jerusalem where they would burn children to Milcom. These are the Ammonites. In fact, the Moabites and the Ammonites joined Babylon in destroying Jerusalem with Nebuchadnezzar. So they're all part of that group. And God was constantly telling them, do not hang out with these people because you will worship their gods. And guess what the people of Israel did? Did they end up worshiping God Shamash? Yes. Did they end up worshiping the god Milcom? Yes. Did they sacrifice children to these gods? Yes. Before finally God brought judgment upon them, using the Moabites and the Ammonites and Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. So this is when we come up with our own solution. Do we understand what down the road's going to happen? No, we don't. Now, let's give a little credit where credit's due. Who else is a Moabitess? Ruth. So we get Ruth. We get Shamash and Milcom, but we also get Ruth, who is a descendant of David, and actually the people of Moab during David's reign gave him some assistance because they were related. So a little bit of good relationship, but the relationship with Ruth is only good because Ruth turned to who? The one true God, right? So this is what the result is. And now, are we going to cause international and eternal problems for people when we make stupid decisions?
Yes.
Maybe.
That's the problem. We don't know the result. Yes.
What's cool is Ruth did to go the way of the world and said give up a life of children.
Yep.
Which is the opposite.
Well, so what? Her
Yeah.
great.
And she was blessed for it.
Yep.
By then becoming the grandmother of Jesus.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
But that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
No, there's a lot of similarities. Just studying Ruth is interesting, especially when put in the light of this and how they came about. But just keep that in mind. When you have a problem, and then how many have problems? How easy is it to think in our own mind, okay, how can I fix this? How can I get good advice and wisdom? How would my friends fix this? How would Dr. Phil fix this? Never listen to that man. It's a good thing. He's on the radio, which is worse. Don't look to the world for wisdom and say, okay, well, how would they fix that problem? Because as Paul says in Ephesians, they're living in darkness. They're blind. They don't have any understanding. They have no relationship with God. They don't know what holiness and righteousness is. Get rid of that side of you who would look to the world and your old ways and the world's ways to fix problems. Instead, turn to who?
The Lord.
Turn to the Lord. And what would the Lord probably have said? Hey, I got this guy Abraham. In fact, it's interesting. Remember Isaac? No, you don't, because he's not in the story yet. He's coming up next week. But when Isaac came and he needed somebody to marry, what did his parents say? Do not go to the people around you. Go over there to our family. Go back to there, and we will. And did God bless him with Rebekah?
Sure did.
Yeah. And even when Jacob needed, he had to run for his life for it, but where did he end up going? To family, right? God can make a way to do it the right way, right? There's always a righteous way. There's always a good way to do it. Let God handle it, right? So that's what we learn from the daughters of Lot. Now, what about Abraham? He has a perfect record, doesn't he? No, he does not. And sometimes not only do we have to get rid of the old ways of thinking, the world's ways, but sometimes we have to get rid of the same old mistakes. How many remember one of Abraham's big mistakes so far? We know the one about Hagar and stuff like that. What was the other big mistake? In Egypt. Remember, he went down to Egypt because there was famine in the land. He went down to Egypt, and because his wife Sarah was so beautiful at around 65, 70 years old, and he was afraid that they would come kill him and take her, right? So he said, she is my sister. Now, technically, yes. They are stepbrothers and sisters and things like, half brothers and sisters. Yes, but it's the wife, right? Now, she was so beautiful, by the way. It's still amazing to me that it was Pharaoh that said, she's the one, and went to take her as his wife. And then God brought judgment on them, so he got the whole thing settled out. And he left Egypt with quite a bit of booty. He took care of them, right, and everything like that. Now, clearly, he would let go of that then, right? This whole idea that I have the answers, and he would never do that again, would he?
Yes.
Genesis chapter 20. Genesis chapter 20, we're going to start in verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from thence. And basically this must be the Mamre, that area where he was, where the Lord and the two angels came and talked. And what promise was made? Let me think for a moment. What promise was made there and then by the Lord that she would what?
Have a child.
Have a child this time next year, right? So the promise is made. He's 99. She's 89. And they leave. Now, do they leave because of a famine? Because they had to? It doesn't say. It just says they left. So just made their own decision. They decided to go. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in a place called Gerar. Okay? And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. He wouldn't make that mistake again, would he? Still going back to the solution. As we're going to find out, that was the deal they made before they even left the area of Ur. It was like, when we go into Canaan, it's going to be a hostile area. Wherever we go, when anybody asks, you're my sister. He was so afraid. And they have kept it up. Just because it was a deal early on, does that mean you should keep doing it? When God clearly shows you that it's the wrong decision, should you stop doing it? And we say, this is silly. Of course, I wouldn't do that. But let's be honest with ourselves. How many times have we done something that we know is wrong, and we just keep doing it because it's the way we've always done it? Stop it. Let's see how it turns out this time. Verse 2. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. 89-year-old, pregnant, probably by this point, Sarah. Probably not showing. It's a little early in the process, by the way the timeline goes. But yeah. The king. How many want to see Sarah someday? It's one of those situations where when you meet Sarah, you just want to say, can you just show me what you look like at 65? Can you show me what you look like at 89? I just got to see. I'm just curious. And again, the king is the one that took her. Verse 3. But who came to the rescue? But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are but a dead man. For the woman which thou hast taken, she is a man's wife. Man, tough. Poor Abimelech. What did he do wrong?
I should get hit the plague though this time.
Well, barren women. So, yeah, but at least not the plague. So, things like that. But God is going to protect Abraham and Sarah, isn't he? Because Sarah is going to have who? Isaac, right? He will solve the problem. Does that mean Abraham was okay to do what he did? No. Just because God keeps solving the problems and keeps blessing you doesn't mean what you did was right. Let's keep that in mind right off the bat, right? In fact, let's see what happens. Verse 4. But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? It's like, wait. Yeah, I took her to put her in my harem and stuff like that. But I haven't done anything. I haven't come near her. She be not unto me. She is my, said he not unto me, she is my sister? Didn't he say? Didn't Abraham say is my sister? It's a sister, she's free, which is still. Again, just because he did it back then doesn't mean it's right. You can't just take women off the street and say, hey, you're my wife. That's not the way it works. And even she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. I have done nothing wrong. And God said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. So God even intervened so that they would not be together and there would be no sin. God's taking care of them, isn't he? Will God take care of us? Which should remind us, why did they say sister to begin with? What could he possibly be afraid of? God said next year you're going to have a son with Sarah. You don't think God can do that? You don't think God can protect her? But again, we're picking on them, but what about us? How could doing the unrighteous thing, how could doing the wrong thing ever be the answer? It can't be, can it? No. Verse 7, now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for you, and you shall live. And if you restore her not, know that thou shalt surely die, you and all that are thine. I'm wiping out your entire family. Very Chicago. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning. Wouldn't you? I'm going to go immediately. Probably did. Probably as soon as he woke up, was like, I'm going. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. Let's get this thing taken care of. And called all his servants and told all these things in their ears. And then the men were sore afraid. It's just like, God is against us because of what has happened here. Was it their fault? No. And they can say that, but the bottom line is they got to fix it, right? And that's the sad thing. When we make those kind of decisions, it often even falls on others to have to fix it, doesn't it? And is that fair? Is what's happening with Abimelech fair? Not completely unfair. So don't fall back on the old ways and the old habits and the world's ways. Don't do it because other people get affected. Verse 9, then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, what hast thou done unto us? By the way, very similar to what? Pharaoh's. What have you done to us? And what have I offended thee? And thou hast brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? What did I do against you? I let you into my area. I'm taking care of you. Have I done anything against you? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. Everybody knows that, right? And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? Bottom line is, what made you think? What did you see in us that made you do this? What was your thought process, Abraham, that brought you to this? And Abraham explains, verse 11. And Abraham said, because I thought. Anybody see where the problem is?
They're thinking.
Yeah. Stop thinking. Stop thinking the worldly way. Stop thinking with your mind. Go to the Lord for the truth, right? Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake.
So he's already put down.
He's already decided that they are sinful, already decided that they don't care about God's way, already decided they're unrighteous, therefore I need to protect myself from them. What's wrong with that? Which we gave him credit earlier, right? For trying to save the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. If there's just 10 righteous people, don't destroy them. He wasn't very judgy, right, with them. Was he judgy here, though?
Oh, yeah.
And he let that judgment, that prejudgment, that prejudice against them cause him to sin and then cause them to sin. So who's the real sinner? It's kind of like the story of Jonah. Who's the real villains? Not the ones you think are, but the ones that God knows are, right? So you feel sorry for people of Gerar because they're going to have to deal with this. But the king said, I will take care of it. And he did admit, verse 12, and I love Abraham, I didn't lie. Verse 12, and yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. Now, don't get freaked out about that. That was very common back then. You had to marry within family, and that wasn't very easy sometimes, right? And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said unto her, this is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place whither we shall come. Say of me, he is my brother. So again, even as they left to go into the land, that was the deal. Does that make it smart? In fact, when they showed them in Egypt it was wrong, they should have known, let's not do that anymore, right? But they stuck with the old ways. They stuck with the old agreement, didn't they? And it's coming back to bite them. But what did Abimelech do? Verse 14, Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored him his wife, Sarah. How similar is that to his experience in Egypt? Again, God blessed, right? The result is what? God corrected it. God fixed it, and even God blessed Abraham. Does that make it right? Just a little trick in life. If you do the wrong thing, just because God still blesses you doesn't make it right.
Right.
Right? Still a problem. Look at verse 15. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleases you. And unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother. I wonder if did they do air quotes back then? That'd be really funny. Thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. It's like, basically I had to pay. It's like, listen, this was wrong. This was wrong. And everybody will know it, right? Through this. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So everything was set back to normal, right? And everything's fine now, right? We have to remember, the result is good only why? Because God still blesses. God still had a plan. God still needed to have Abraham and Sarah, and they needed to have a son named Isaac, who was still on his way, right? So just because God's blessing you and God's doing good things doesn't mean everything we've done is right. And will it lead to problems? In fact, what kind of problems did it lead to in his life? We saw the problems this created with Moab and Ammon. What kind of problems could it lead in Abraham's life? Well, what did his son learn? Genesis 26. Genesis 26, starting in verse 6. As I said, Isaac needed a bride, so Abraham and Sarah sent servants up to family to find one, and they found who? Rebecca, right? And they dwelt where? Anyone want to guess where they dwelt? Genesis 26:6. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. That sound familiar? Mm-hmm. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, "She is my sister." For he feared to say, "She is my wife," lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon.
What a family.
Yeah, well, you know, she's young.
She wasn't 89.
She wasn't 89 years old. But still, like father, like son. So let's keep that in mind too. Just because your family does it that way doesn't mean it's the right way. Right? Just go, "Oh, that's the way my dad did things, so let's do it that way too." It may not still be the right way. Even if it was the right way for them, it may not be the right way for you, right? Who decides what is right?
God.
God. Go to God. Did Isaac go to God? Nope. Did he know he was the son of promise? Did he know he was the one that was going to be blessed? Did he know there was a covenant with him and God would take care of him? Yeah. But why did he fear? Why do we fear? Why do we fear to do the right thing? So what happened? And it came to pass when he had been there a long time that, what? Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife. So this time Abimelech's got to be really tired of this family. Abimelech takes Rebekah, and after a while, so she'd been living with him for a while. Again, there don't appear to be any problems created, but still, been there a while. He happens to look out the window and sees Rebekah and Isaac sporting. I love that word, don't you? Sporting. So they're making out in the garden, okay? Verse 9, and Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, of a surety she is thy wife, and how sayest you she is my sister?" And Isaac said unto him, "Because I said, lest I die for her." Again, just wrong attitude, guy. You should be willing to die for your wife. Everybody agree?
Oh, yeah.
And Abimelech said, "What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have leaned with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us." And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, "He that touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to what? Death. He'd been kind to them, brought them in, but something bad could have happened, right? God protect them?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And actually, it caused quite a bit of problems between them. Isaac was a digger of wells. There became fights over property, and God blessed Isaac more than others, and there became friction. And by the way, who is he the king of again at this point? Philistines. They weren't any problem later on, were they? Could it have been a lot better? Yeah, could have been much better. Could have been a much better relationship than it turned out to be there in Gerar. But this is the problem, isn't it? What do we need to do? We need to let go of what we think is right. We need to let go of the world's ways of thinking, the world's solutions, right? When there is a problem, who should we go to?
God.
Go to God, go to His Word, go to godly people who will help us go through God's Word and find the answer, right? That's where you go. Will He answer us? If anyone lacks wisdom, what will God do? Give it to you overflowing. He will do it. He will show you the way and expect you to obey and follow that path, even if it is hard. He will do it. The other way is what? Well, I think, my friends do it this way. The world does it this way. Whose way should we do it? Do it God's way. And let go of these other ways, because they lead to problems. Now, again, I'm not expecting you to, whole nations of hatred to come out of it, but certainly it can cause quite a bit of problems down the road, not just for you, but for others as well, right? And not just for you, but even for your family down the road, right? We've got to be careful here on how we do things and do it God's way. Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Easy to say, hard to do. So, Put away those worldly wisdoms and seek God.